Here's the scenario. You've been injured in a serious accident. The doctor says your recovery could take months, maybe even years, yet your insurance company is denying your claim every step of the way. If something like this happens to you, call me, Brian Goldfinger of Goldfinger Personal Injury Law. We have offices in Toronto, London, Peterborough, and now Kitchener-Waterloo. Visit goldfingerlaw.com and get us working for you.
Get Goldfinger today.
You know what I want?
Hey, that's pretty good. The Raptors defeating the Boston Celtics in overtime, 115-112, in a game that can only be described as Pascal Siakam's playground. He just got to exhibit so much of what makes him special, and also how dependent the Raptors are on him in this current stage of their season, where Fred VanVleet is so clearly, hampered by his knee injury. Gary Trent Jr. is still trying to make his way back from injury. OG Anunoby as well. Precious Achiuwa streaking, yes. Chris Boucher playing the best basketball of his life, yes. But these are players who, Precious at best is self-creating on like 3 or 4 possessions a game. Chris Boucher hardly ever. And these guys are complementary players currently. Precious, who knows what he grows into. And he's dominant defensively, and Chris Boucher has been great defensively too. But we're talking about guys who have been giving these consistent performances as complementary players. And once again, it falls to Pascal Siakam to just kind of work his way along with his team through this game, where teams, yes, are playing pack the line defense, who are just gapping defensively like they don't care about any of the open shots that come as a consequence of doubling Pascal or throwing attention his way. And he obliterated them and eviscerated them until they figured out, okay, this is how we're going to guard him. We're going to put a small on him that's going to be able to foul him with impunity and hand check him so he can't get downhill quick. And then if he does get downhill, he has to gather, and then we'll harass him. Then we'll double him as soon as the ball is picked up. And when he passes out of it, there's no punishment because guys aren't going to hit threes. They hit enough threes, I guess. Did they hit enough threes relative to how open they were? Not nearly, but they ended up winning the game. Pascal plays 47 minutes, 7 more than anybody else on the team. He fouls out with like 51 seconds left, and he gives you 40 points, 13 boards, 2 blocks, 3 steals, and an assist. He shoots 58% from the field. He got to the line to hit the free throws to tie the game at the end. He scored the basket prior to that. He got blocks in overtime. He was just immense. He was incredible, and there was so little in the way of help from his teammates in this one that he just carried. Sisyphus comes to mind. No man is an island comes to mind. Just people doing things alone, these incredible feats of strength, of willpower, and all that kind of stuff. Pascal made it work in this game and did so against a Celtics team that got away with a lot and still had really scrappy defenders, with that being said. Like Marcus Smart, Grant Williams, Aaron Nesmith had a really nice defensive game, even if I thought he had too much of a leash to foul. I mean, he defended well, especially in the capacity he was supposed to. Tice had a pretty good defensive game for some stretches. So it's not the same as like Al Horford, Tatum. Rob Williams won't be back this season. So, as great as he's been, that won't be a consideration for a future matchup in the playoffs or anything like that. But Tatum and Horford especially, I think Brown's defense is way overrated. I think that Nesmith and Grant Williams did a better job tonight than Brown will likely do. But anyway, they have a lot of good defenders and team defenders at that who will complicate these actions for Pascal. But he followed the blueprint. You go to the soft spots on the floor that the Celtics defense is comfortable allowing for other players, and you dominate in those soft spots. And he did. I mean, he's bouncing Grant Williams, one of the, like, he's heavier set, yes, but he's also like pound for pound one of the strongest dudes in the league. He's a fire hydrant, much in the same way that Kyle Lowry is, except he's just much bigger. And Pascal had his way with him. Pascal cooked Daniel Tice on the perimeter. When he had Neesmith in single coverage and they weren't shading so hard, he cooked them too. It was just an immense game. And, you know, it was kind of like anybody can get it. Derek White, Tice, Neesmith, Grant Williams, Sam Hauser, whoever, Pascal Siakam gave it to him over the course of this game. And late, man, oh my Lord, late. They went one possession after playing Siakam so tough, you know, just digging down, hand checking on the dribble, shading so hard. So he had to pick it up and he had to pass out. And nobody on the Raptors is making shots down the stretch. You know, he's passing the ball out. And then that late finish where he got Tice on him for a possession. He just went right straight to the front of the bucket, finished up top. And then the next possession, he gets Neesmith. They run a little handoff play. He has the empty side. The help is going to come from the middle, not the baseline. So he sees an opportunity. I can go baseline. I can get to the banker. Neesmith fouls him. He goes to the line. He ties the game up. Then in overtime, he takes that little spin off Derek White. It rims out Thad, who was just tremendous as the 5 in this game. He taps it loose. Pascal grabs it, puts it up and in. Then Pascal comes down, hits a little step back midi. That was, you know, to make it 113 to 110. And then he gets a block. And it's just like, he's had such a penchant for big blocks so far this year. And it is obviously by proxy of the Raptors playing small late. A lot of the time that puts him in a position where, hey, he's the guy who has to step over and be the last guy contesting at the rim. When you have 5 fouls, that is, you know, it's a pretty tough line to walk. And he did end up fouling out, but it was on a loose ball foul where, you know, fair play. Like he didn't get to the ball first, and he and I think it was Naismith collided in the air, and that was it. But the way he took into account how the Celtics were attacking, where the other help was, who was going to the bucket, he chose the exact right shots to contest, and he chose the right ones to kind of just be in the vicinity to rebound if they did happen to miss. But also, he wasn't going to be caught fouling. He had to be in there offensively because the Raptors had nothing outside of him. Great googly moogly. What a performance. Like, he left it all out there, you know, and he didn't even get to be out there for the last 50 seconds. He had to go sit on the bench. They go, you know. So just Pascal, first and foremost, lifting his team to just an incredible victory that featured just really, really clutch moments. And he had 25 points in the first half. When they decided, like, even it was single coverage, he was fine. Double, he was fine. It was the doubles with the shading. That was where he had a really tough part, was that the Celtics decided, you know, if they beat us by hitting threes off of kickouts, then that's what it is. But the Raptors very much in this game were not going to win on kickouts. They shot 10 of 39 from downtown. You know, Thad hitting 2 of 5 seems like a miracle, especially since one came from above the break. And the other one was like this no hesitation, hand in the face, corner 3. He killed it, and his defense was awesome. But yeah, Pascal took a matchup that wanted nothing to do with him scoring points, and he put 40 on it. Like, slapped it down on the table, bet on himself, and said, I'm getting there. And did it late, did it early, did it late, made it happen. Incredible game. Oh, wow. For my money, that's the best performance of any Raptor so far this year. I mean, certainly there's been like these captivating, you know, Fred had the 24-point quarter. The Scottie game against the Lakers, if it had been punctuated with a win, very well may have been considered like that. But how important this game is, how reliant the rest of the team was on Pascal, this is a big one. And he came to play. This is a game that the Raptors just can't lose. This is a game that earlier in the season, the Raptors absolutely lose, but Pascal found, you know, a higher gear and stayed in it until the tank was empty, man. This was the best Raptor performance of the season so far. And, you know, the guys who helped out the most, they're like OG and, you know, Precious and Thad, I would say. Those guys were the most helpful. Fred came along and he hit those big late threes, the two of them. That was awesome to see. But a lot of his decision-making in this game was like bankrupt. really, really bad decision making. And, I don't want to be too hard on him, but he pressed too hard. And I understand why he wanted to, because he's trying to do things that he did all year. And right now he's not capable of doing them. That's so frustrating for him. That's so difficult. But he pushed a little too hard. He didn't have the proper awareness to kind of settle on some possessions and then say, this would be better used elsewhere. Because he flat out just gave up some possessions. And that's tough to do when the Celtics are playing the way they are. The Celtics are getting to so many extra possessions. They had 16 offensive rebounds. Even if they don't hit, they're getting those extra looks that maybe you aren't. The Raptors, they usually win the offensive rebounding game, and they tied them in this one. It was 16-16. So the Raptors, they usually win that, and they, if they shoot okay, then all right. But they have the extra possessions to buoy them. But not in this game. You have Derek White pulling up for 3 in this one. You're kind of up against it. Like, Derek White goes 3 for 8 from downtown, and Fred VanVleet goes 3 for 9. That is a trade-off in percentages you do not expect that you have to make in a game like this. But as it turns out, they ended up having to make it. Marcus Smart 2 for 11 is probably more of what they expected to see in this game. But yeah, man, Thad, I want to touch on Thad. Actually, let's just go from the start of the game. I'll give you the cliff notes. So, start of the fourth quarter. Things look pretty rough. The Celtics are funneling the ball. The Raptors can't contain at the point of attack. The ball is kind of filling out to the corners and open shooters. Hey, they get looks. Precious Achiuwa, Chris Boucher check in. This kind of meets, in the flow of the game where Pascal's starting to take over. But Precious and Boucher are, a very nice defensive pair. They help shore that up. Then they take Pascal out. They're kind of hoping Fred commandeers the offense and makes something happen. That is not the case. And so, no Pascal on the court. Scotty and Precious give you a little bit of an offensive bump. Then the rest of the second quarter, I would say, is mostly played through Pascal. And he's still just scoring the hell out of the ball, kind of putting in the work. And we get to a point where Pascal is just pumping in these points, gets to 25 points at half. And this is where the Celtics decide that, okay, at halftime, we're going to start playing him fundamentally different. And this is where you get into the Aaron Nesmith is his regular check. And he's going to play really handsy defense. He's going to apply pressure with all his might. You try and make it so that Pascal gets downhill slow so that the help can come slow too. And the help doesn't have to make any rash decisions that are easy to play make against. And that was done, I think, with the assistance of fouling. But the thing about that is, Fred VanVleet plays for the Raptors, as did Kyle Lowry. Smaller guys get to foul all the time. And even though I don't agree with it, Nesmith got away with a lot, but they were operating, I think, with a similar ethic as far as that's concerned. And then so third quarter, the Raptors, this is where they really, really start to struggle offensively because Pascal, the adjustment has come. He doesn't get to just break every offensive possession open by dominating. And the ball is funneling to some guys like Precious has a point here or there. Chris gets to a spot here or there. Thad is, making, nice plays as well. And you're waiting for one of Gary or Fred, basically, to kind of pop off and make the game seem like, okay, this makes sense. These are the Raptors we know. This is kind of what we expect on a night-to-night basis. But that doesn't really end up happening. And Scotty Barnes is even in a worse position because up to this point, he's playing horrible defense. And I'll say it. The Raptors actually, it was like a blessing in disguise when Scotty fouled out. Not in that, Marcus Smart ended up getting free throws, of which he split them. But Scotty was having a really, really bad game. Gary and Scotty, the reason why the defense was so bad for the first quarter was largely because of Scotty and Gary. And Gary, you understand, like he's getting back. Even Nick Nurse before the game was like, he's moving better than we think, but he's not moving that well. And this is a guy who has to range defensively. And he did make some plays late, but more often than not, I think that he was limited in how he could provide ball pressure and also rotate at the back end of possessions. We saw that on certain plays. And Scotty, this is the thing about rookies. Maybe if Scotty didn't foul out, he would have popped off at the other end of the game because rookies are inconsistent. But especially when you're like the fourth overall pick, as we've seen, Scotty can reach incredibly high highs. So maybe that would have happened, but his performance in this game was really, is very bad. His defense was the worst on the floor. Yeah, by I would say a significant measure. And offensively, there were some possessions that you like because he's getting downhill. He's that unstoppable isolation player where he's getting to his spot. He's kind of turning on a dime, scoring up to the basket, making shots. That's great, but the jump shot wasn't going, and he couldn't cut into certain space to kind of help alleviate where Pascal was receiving so much attention, because the Celtics were they're going to give the outside shot, and they didn't care what it looked like. They just didn't want anything to happen on the inside. And so cuts into the middle, especially with very, very grabby defenders like Tice and Marcus Smart, it was tough to try and, put the needle through the pin. I don't even know what kind of words I'm using. Put the needle through the pin. Yeah, sure. Anyway, it was hard to to thread the needle through the interior of the Boston defense. And, quite frankly, the Raptors just didn't really even try. And the Celtics did a really good job of contesting at the rim as this, dog pile version of it. Like Grant Williams, Marcus Smart, Daniel Tice, they kind of all got up there and made things difficult. Good, like great googly moogly. The Raptors didn't deliver on a lot of what they needed to, but it certainly wasn't because of Siakam. The limitations were seen elsewhere. Like Scotty played much worse than you might have expected. Fred played much worse than a person might have expected. Gary played much worse than a person might have expected. And Precious, as I said, Precious Achiuwa and Chris Boucher punch in the way that they can. Precious better in this game than other games, but it's still not. You're not replacing what Gary or Fred or Scotty can do offensively if they have it going. And then Thad, man, this is where he really plugged in, and he was helping make so many plays as a connective player, as a guy who the ball funneled to, and you see the possession, the way it's going, and you say, the shot comes here, or it's just going to be something worse. And the shot he was taking for a lot of people tonight was a shot that wasn't going in. But with him, it went in often enough. And then defensively, Thaddeus was tremendous. I talked about how Scotty and Gary just didn't have it tonight. Thad did. Thad switched out on Smart. He switched out on Derek White. He made all of them pay. I didn't see him get beat in isolation. They were able to neuter a lot of the pick and roll actions that got the Celtics quite a few looks earlier in the game by just flattening them out, making them isolations, kind of like what was happening to Freddie. And Thad, when he was put in a position where he had to defend a smaller player, he made it work, and he got a stop. And then in addition to that, still made his way back to kind of fight for rebounds, clear out space, see what he could do there. The Raptors both gave up. So they did both of these things. They fought like hell and had bad luck on some long rebounds, but they also they weren't mobile enough outside of the guys battling down low. The guys up top weren't engaged enough to chase off the rim or off the tap. Like, they're waiting for an outlet, flat-footed, like on their heels. And, if it gets tapped out into the open space, the amount of time you have, like the jump, like a center fielder, the ball comes off the bat, the jump you get is everything, because the ball is in motion, dude, and you're competing with other people. And the Celtics players are more inclined to be working up court because they're still in their, quote unquote offensive possession. So they're kind of hunting like relocation or if the ball pops out. But the Raptors, they're kind of leaking out to the sidelines. So they're always moved away from the ball. And it was tough in this game. And the fourth quarter, I think, is largely, you could describe it by saying Fred hits 2 big threes. I already described what Pascal did in the fourth quarter, how he tied the game up, how he made everything work, and then how he kind of took over overtime. That's huge. This game came down to the wire. Gary Trent Jr., credit to him making those late free throws to put it from 113 to 115. That was nice to see. The 3-point shot making variance, it came around for the Celtics a little bit at the very end. They, both of their looks just didn't have a chance late, and it was like, okay, this makes sense. Because the Celtics kept pulling these threes from nowhere, like Derek White hitting these pull-up threes that he's had stretches in his career where he shot well, but it's rare to see it these days. And certainly he's like around 25% on the season, if I'm not mistaken. So that is that's tough to swallow, especially when the Raptors have guys like Gary Trent Jr. and Fred VanVleet who are just not hitting on the other side of things. That's tough. that's really tough. And so the Raptors, more than anything, I think in this game, they fought through tough shot making, defense that shot making you can't help. Defense, they certainly didn't help themselves. Way too many dead possessions on that end, just giving up blow-bys and stuff like that. But they found their way through it, and it was largely because of Pascal Siakam. It was like he dragged them through it, actually. And yeah, sheesh. Reggie Evans-Ward, that's Thad Young. Man, he got after it. Gang rebounding, like rebounding against the gang rebounding of the Celtics, just getting bodied possession after possession. Playing great defense, helping grease the wheels on offense, doing so much. And so Reggie Evans-Ward, that's for him. Okay, so top quick reaction comment is from MZ. We got a long one, folks, so strap in. Quote 1. Siakam. Is there anybody who doubts this man now? Pascal is a superstar, period. Clutch defense and clutch baskets and clutch free throws tonight. 2. Fred. I assume whatever's wrong with his knee can't be healed with rest at this point. Otherwise, he'd be sitting a few of these games. He looks bad, and this team needs him to win anything in the playoffs. Very bad break. 3, refs. Does everyone now realize that players have nothing to do with this? It doesn't matter who laces up for Boston against us. They get the calls all game, and it's disgusting. That head ref is now my least favorite ref. Just disgraceful, but the Raps beat them despite playing 5-on-8. Pathetic that it had to even be like this against a team missing 4 out of 5 starters, but what a game. Are we not entertained? Edit. Number 4, does everyone now understand why we got Thad? End quote. Okay, so yeah, Pascal is an all-NBA caliber player. I wrote that big piece about it, and I wrote it because I believe it, not because, fans like to hear it. I believe that. Fred has a quote where he's saying the rest doesn't help it, so you're right there. That's confirmed. And yes, you're absolutely right. This team needs Fred, not even just to create on offense, but to shoot better than 28% from 3. He's even shooting 30% on catch and shoot stuff since the All-Star break. It's not even like the pull-up. It's the catch and shoot stuff still isn't going in. So yeah, refs, everyone watching knew that was a really tough game. The Raptors had way more fouls called on them, and that's not always indicative of something going on, but the Raptors I didn't feel like were so much more aggressive and mistake laden that they should have that many more fouls than, because it was 21-10 before, right before the end of the game. I'm not sure exactly where it finished at with all the fouling and putting guys on the free throw line, but I didn't think that disparity didn't make sense to me. And you can't just look at disparity and say they should have called one here or there and fix it or something like that. But if there's a big enough disparity, you can kind of glean from that, how the game was going. And usually the team that's really aggressive and gets to the rim, that is part of it. But Pascal, on a lot of those drives, man, felt like he was getting, that was a really tough whistle for him. They got to dig really hard in on his body, and he didn't get to set the terms of engagement. And so, yeah, I'm not a guy who talks about refs basically ever, but this was a particularly tough game. Usually when there's a big disparity, I look at the game, I watch it, and I say, the Raptors are not playing a style offensively where they're generating fouls against themselves. They're just not compromising the defense enough to do it. But Pascal Siakam constantly put the Celtics in positions where they had to foul him, and it just felt like it never came. And that was particularly tough to see, especially since he was the engine of the offense. And the Raptors, I definitely agree there were some ticky-tack fouls on the other end. And that was tough. It's, you don't like to see it. And, there's a lot of fouls. Yeah, that's my takeaway is I understand why fans would be upset. I don't like talking about reffing because it's what analysis is there to be made, and is it interesting to do ref analysis? I mean, for some people, sure, but for me, I feel like it's not very valuable from my point of view anyway. And so it's just tough. I definitely I I'm not aggrieved at any Raptors fan who's upset at the reffing. It was a tough one. I think that was pretty clear to see that it was tough. I'm belaboring this point, but anyway, MZ, thanks for writing in. Whether you got into this, listener, in the morning or at night, have a blessed day. Try to avoid overtime in your regular life, especially if you're not getting paid overtime. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.